For a combat athlete, understanding your zone training and how these reflect in our training throughout the week is super important to manage performance and recovery. Now, when we're talking about zone training, we are referring to the red, orange, yellow, and green zones. All of these zones reflect a different level of intensity or heart rate, with our max heart rate and max intensity work being our red, and our green being down the other end and being our low heart rate and low intensity work. Now, when we're looking at the space of our week or our week overall with our training, our pad work, our sparring, our rolling, our strength conditioning, it's important that we understand where these sit in terms of our different zones and understanding what the body is capable of with the amount of food that we give it, the calories that we give it, the amount of recovery and rest that we give it, and the recovery work that we're doing. Now, if we're looking at red zone work, max heart rate, max intensity work, your body's only going to be capable of doing maybe 2 of these a week. Now, these could be your most intense aerobic work conditioning, sort of like your interval sprints on the air bike, something like this, where you're going to take your heart rate to a really high rate, or your hard sparring or your hard rolling, where you're working really hard, you're doing lots of rounds, heart rate's being kept quite high, and your intensity is quite high also. Now, the next one would be our orange range, where it's still a high heart rate, not a max heart rate, but it still is high. And this could be your hard pad work, your conditioning work, or your sprint drill, something to this effect. Now, then we've got our moderate heart rate, our moderate intensity work, skill-based work, pad work, light rolling, footwork drills, stuff to this effect, where your heart rate is going to be elevated, but it's not going to be elevated to the point where you're going to be working super hard. This is more your skill-based stuff rather than your high intensity sort of sparring or conditioning work. Now, we also have our green zone stuff down the end here. So our low intensity, low heart rate stuff, active recovery work. This could be walking, stretching, sauna, ice bath, some slow rate swimming where heart rate is going to be kept quite a moderate range or down the low end. Now, if we looked at our week as a whole, it's important that we scatter a few of these different days throughout the week. Now, we're going to need possibly 2 high intensity, max heart rate work, a few sort of high intensity, a few moderate, and a few of their green, making sure that we are giving ourselves enough recovery throughout the space of a week, enough time off from our other degrees of training. Now, a lot of combat athletes stick in the red zone way too much. They're doing too much high intensity work. The calories don't reflect this amount of work. They also aren't giving the body the chance to recover. They're more prone to injury. Risk of infection, risk of injury goes up, immune system gets suppressed, and their performance inherently goes down. Now, if we were to scatter in 2 of these a week, a couple of the high intensity work, a few moderate, and some low intensity recovery work, you're going to recover much better overall. You can't redline the body over and over and over again and expect it not to push back. Now, people go into fight camps and they tend to do too much max intensity work, and their injury risk goes up, immune system goes down, they start getting sick, chest infections, all this different stuff during fight camp, which then ultimately reduces their performance. Looking at our training week as a whole and managing these sort of different ranges is super important if you want to perform well, keep your risk of injury low, and have a long career in combat sports.